I would recommend you grab a hot cup of coffee, maybe a scarf, a blanket, something, because with our temperatures being in the 20s during the overnight hours, this is the perfect time to come on in, grab yourself a seat, and join us in the locker room. My name is Jim Carmack. I'm here always with our senior pastor, Pastor Jim Locke.
Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
I'm freezing.
It is iced cold,
and
man.
I feel like we did this because a few weeks back, you remember we talked about this when you wear the quarter zip. We know it's cold outside, and I think we were probably in the 30s or 40s at that time. Now we're in the 20s, and that's a little ridiculous. I'm just going to say there's no reason for that.
It's biting and bracing cold. Is what it is.
Yeah.
And we were over at the Spanish Trail campus yesterday preaching, had a great time with them, and stopped and grabbed something to eat for lunch. And I mean, we got to the car after lunch just in time, and it was, talking about apocalyptic, it was, the storm clouds were roiling and boiling, and that wind stuff was flying across the road. And so we had obviously a stormy condition, but it was, when I got up yesterday morning, it was early, but the windows were kind of condensed over. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, it's humid again. Mm-hmm. And we've had pretty dry air for a long time. So that humidity was out there.
Yeah.
And then that rain, and most of the day yesterday, though, was kind of balmy, stayed balmy till last night.
Yeah.
When it started to shift. And then, man, when I got up this morning, Judy had to go in for an early shift at the surgery center this morning. It was frigid out there. So, yeah.
What you don't want to see on the forecast is that the low for the day is like in the 20s, and then you're looking at a sunny forecast with highs near 40. That's not good, because that just means that the winds are so strong they're bringing in all that cold air. And that's just what we're going to sit in all day. And the winds have been howling outside. So if you hear something kind of knocking against the window or something, it's the wind kind of roaring through.
That sun kind of invites you to come outside.
Yeah.
And so you accept the invitation, and it doesn't take long to think, oh, and I've had enough of this sunshine. I'm going back in the house. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and we're in a separate building out here from the main Hillcrest building, the Lastinger building, and the offices and all that, and our main building. We're recording this in a separate building, and so there's about a 20-foot gap that you have to navigate.
And there's lots of breezeways out here in the older parts of our facility. Lots of breezeways and underhangs, and man, oh man! And then I come over here to this building, and the door is locked.
Sorry about that.
The door is never locked, and it's locked, and that wind is whipping around that corner. So, yeah, we Floridians, when it comes to cold, it doesn't take long to turn us into weaklings. And but it could be worse. My mother up in the Nashville area, some of Judy's families, my brother lives up there. They got quite a bit of ice.
Yeah.
And it was interesting going to the live action cam shots of downtown Nashville and just seeing how creepy crawly the traffic was moving, those that ventured out, because it was a frozen tundra. And my mother was without power for a couple of hours yesterday. Fortunately, it was restored fairly quickly. It was mostly ice, and that doesn't mix well with power lines.
For sure.
But Judy's brother, who lives in a different section of the Nashville area, he's probably half an hour from where my mother lives, was without power all day. And one of his daughters lived close by in a neighboring community that did have power, spotty.
Yeah.
So she had power. They all had to pile up and go over there with her. But his power was out the entire day before it was restored just before sunset last night.
Yeah.
So rough, could be worse.
Yeah, not what you want with those temperatures
No.
for sure. But yeah, you're right. We're blessed to not have to do
I think it got down to 8 degrees.
There in Nashville,
last night.
Goodness. And that's Nashville. That's not even
Nashville.
the north. That's
No.
not where they're dealing with these
Mid-South.
sub-zero temperatures. And my goodness.
No. So my mother texted me this morning saying she's longing for spring. I said, well, you won't have long.
Yeah.
Next week will probably be spring-like.
Yeah, at least feel like it here. We hope. We hope. It was fun here at the 9 Mile campus because you mentioned you were at the Spanish Trail campus. Dustin Scott was preaching here, and he wrapped up the second service. And what he did was he finished praying, and he said, something along the lines of, he said, I love y'all, and you're welcome to stay at church as much as you want. We're glad you're here when the doors are open. But he said, according to our staff meteorologist, Jim Carmack, you got about 23 minutes to get to your car and get on the road because the storms are coming.
Yeah.
And it hit.
About that time.
It was right at that time. And it crashed. So I felt good that we told people to go, and then I felt really good that it was right on time. So,
well, that was us because, the Spanish Trail campus only has the 9:30 service. Mm-hmm. So we get out a little bit earlier, take advantage of that. We rarely eat out on a Sunday. If we do, we pick something up and take it to the house. But when we're over at Spanish Trail, Judy and I that'd be a date lunch.
Right, of course.
So because we're out earlier, and so we get to a restaurant around 11:15, 11:20 or so, and that's what we did. So we left the restaurant about the time church here at the 9 Mile campus was getting out, and so it was kind of spooky, and the rain was sheeting on the way home. But we made it, and the storm has passed, and now we're looking forward to brighter and warmer conditions.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Good day at Spanish Trail?
We really did. I can't remember a time at Spanish Trail where I didn't feel like it was a good day. There's a great spirit over there. Of course, you were on staff there for a while.
Absolutely. Love them.
There's very sweet people. And every time I go over there, I only get to preach there 2 times a year maybe 3 at the most. But between my out-of-office schedule here and, things that require me to be away on a Sunday, sometimes it's hard to get over there.
Yeah.
I had planned to be over there like the 3rd Sunday in February during what used to be called D-Now weekend. And historically, we turn the service over to the student ministry on that day.
Yeah.
And the last 2 or 3 years, have used that as an opportunity to go over and preach at Spanish Trail because someone else is usually going to be in the pulpit here. And so that was my plan. I had to rearrange my schedule, and actually I'm going to still be out that Sunday, but I've made arrangements to preach at Kevin Cannell's church, Cross Community Church in Savannah, which is one of our 4 church plants that we're supporting. And he had been after me to come down and preach and kind of do just a little mother church type visit, if you will. And that seemed to me to be a good time to do that since I knew I already had the pulpit filled for the D-Now Sunday. So because of that took Spanish Trail out of the mix. Yeah. And as I was thinking about it, I quickly shifted on the fly and asked Dustin, I said, if I don't get over to Spanish Trail like soon, I'm not sure when, because the calendar is going to start to get really hectic. Yeah. And I can go next Sunday if you can preach this next Sunday. And he jumped at it, was delighted to have the opportunity, and I'm always grateful because he loves to preach, and I can always count on him, which is great, as I can any of our staff who are available. So anyway, that was a good opportunity for me to go over and spend a little bit of time with them, and it was a very fine Sunday.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm discovering as I go over there: more and more people I do not know.
Yeah.
So I made several new friends yesterday, the faces of whom I don't recall ever seeing before, and it was a comfortably full room that was pretty energetic. So yes. It's a different environment for sure, a little smaller obviously than 9 Mile, but very tight-knit, worshipful, responsive to the preaching. So yeah, it was a really good day. Always enjoy the opportunity. And they're Hillcrest people,
Well,
and we have to remember that. It's not me going to another church.
Right.
It's me going to another location of the same church.
Well, and let's talk about that for a few minutes on this one, because we just celebrated 10 years of Hillcrest Spanish Trail, and that's how we refer to it. But we've had new members come here. We've had people that didn't come with us on that journey. You and I have been through that, but we kind of assume and remember it. But can you just give a quick recap of that process? You kind of hit on this during our Discover Hillcrest classes, but just maybe take us back to 10 years, kind of how that developed and how it's evolved over the years and what we're looking at now.
Well, that was as much a God thing, if I could use that phrase, as anything that I've had happen in ministry. I mean,
if you can't use the phrase, no one can.
Yeah, that's right. It was a God thing. And the Lord literally dropped that opportunity in our lap. That basically happened, and churches have been doing multi-campus ministry for a number of decades now, even going back to, the mid to late 1980s and beyond. And so it's not a new thing, though it may have been new to a lot of our people, because Hillcrest had never been a part of multi-campus ministry at all. And so that whole thing started basically with a lunch meeting between two student pastors. Our student pastor at the time and the student pastor at what was then East Hill Baptist Church. And, that was a church that had fallen on difficult days. They, at one time, were a very hustling, bustling, thriving church, going back for a number of years.
Right.
And decades, even. At one time, the only church in Pensacola, you go back to the 1960s, that was larger than East Hill Baptist Church was First Baptist Pensacola.
Yeah.
And so, but things had changed over time, and the church had become very small. And once you experience several years of decline, it becomes very difficult to sustain mojo again and get that momentum back.
Yeah.
Very little, if any. I mean, they had a student minister, but really there was very little youth in the church. It was mostly an older congregation. And so the student pastor who was there at the time basically communicated to our student pastor, who came back and communicated it to me, that the pastor of the church there would be open to the possibility of a church merger. And so I was initially skeptical because most of the time churches tend to be very territorial about stuff like that. And it's tough to admit that you kind of need a white knight to come in and ride to the rescue kind of thing. Yeah. But the pastor was totally in support of it potentially, though he couldn't arbitrarily make the decision. And so we began to have some meetings with a group of their church leaders. And I'll never forget the first meeting that we had, because the room, we had a few of our leaders who were present, but they had more than we did in the room at the time at this initial meeting, and I could, tell that it was really standoffish and a lot of skepticism and the like. And so, it wasn't anything we were going to push, because that would have been counterproductive. But we just prayed through it, and the more we did and the more we talked, the more the pastor got behind it. And that was the critical piece of it, because he got behind it, and and here's a guy basically that's, by doing that's working himself out of a job. But he had other opportunities. He and his wife did, back where they're from, in a different part of the country. And so he got behind it, and that was the turning point. And eventually the church voted. Our church voted to make that move in an overwhelming vote. And then their church had to vote as well in a separate business conference. Yeah. And then we had the merger. And then, of course, the first thing we did was begin the process of determining how we were going to staff it and who was going to staff it and when that transition would take place. And then we, of course, had to pay attention to facility upgrades and what was necessary for us to start in the strongest possible way. And, one of the big miracles, Jim, about that whole thing was how much the 9 Mile campus supported that move.
Right.
Especially when it came to putting money where the mouth was, and provided some working capital for us to upgrade that building, bring it into modernity, so that the facility could be presented to the community in a first-rate kind of way, providing a very welcoming environment. I remember going to the church, and you probably remembered at the time too, because you were providing leadership as a member of our congregation at that time. But I remember stepping into the pulpit after the vote and basically saying, okay, here's the thing, y'all have voted to do this, and I need $800,000, and I need it in 90 days.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to go into any more debt. We were still servicing the debt on our westward expansion, which was a $10 million project. And so I said, we need $800,000, and I need it in 90 days. And so we kind of rolled out how we were going to do that and the steps by which we were going to do it. And to make a long story short, I didn't get $800,000 in 90 days. I got $600,000 in 90 days, but I got $1 million by that December in 6 months. So it was, I would gladly accept that. And so the 9 Mile campus ended up giving $1 million in order to bring that building up to a great working condition. And a big chunk of that, of course, was technology, which the church was woefully under-digitized, if I could say it that way. And so we spent a few $100,000 just on technology over there, screens and projection and soundboards, and then taking that into preschool and children and student areas as well. So it was a wonderful experience, and the church now is running around 300. If you take everybody, every active member there at the same time, probably 350, which is a significant jump from the 50 or 60 that were there when we did the merger. And a number of those who were not necessarily, I say a number, I mean there were a handful, who were not in favor of the merger left the minute it happened. And so, you know, some of those stalwart people that were there decided to do something else, leaving us with even fewer in terms of the original cast at what was East Hill. And so to see where the church is now is an amazing thing. Great leadership. So we've got high hopes.
It's fun, not fun, wrong word. It's for me to look back on it, what I remember, because those are difficult conversations and they're hard things to talk about, like you said, and sometimes they are. There is a businessy side to it, but overwhelming when I first joined on staff there, just the willingness of the members to be all in with us, to let us try things and figure out some, you know, new stuff we wanted to do, just to see how, you know, not anything crazy, but we want to do a new thing. The members are all with us. And if I go back now, I was actually back there a couple weeks ago for our missions fair, went over. And no less than 5 or 6 of the longtime members who were there before Hillcrest showed up still walk up to me today, give me a big hug and say, I want you to know I'm praying for you.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
They mean it.
Yeah.
And it's such an encouragement to me. It just boosts and lifts me up. So nothing but great memories for Spanish Trail. Love being there. And the sweet, wonderful people.
I had several of those encounters with the longer term people that predated the merger. And they're always just so sweet. I think that, you know, the ones that stayed have been the ones, obviously, that were most blessed by the transition. And a lot of that we did was trial and error.
Right.
And not all of it was successful.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, for example, I had guys who had done this before in other settings. I was trying to get counsel, you know, and I had pastors telling me, you know, they're going to want to put some conditions on the merge. Don't accept any conditions. You don't want to do that because it will hamstring you from the very beginning, and they're probably not wise conditions. So I had this in my ear, and then sure enough, we're presented with a condition. And the condition was, from many of the existing people, we don't want to watch a preacher on a screen, because we were setting it up as a video venue. Where we were going to basically do a form of live streaming. It wasn't, you know, one-to-one live streaming. There was a bit of a delay, and some of that was not always faithful. It didn't always work. And so our campus pastor, who was David Wiggins when we started, had to be ready with the sermon manual. He had to be ready
every week.
He knew what I was preaching, and he would get the text, but he had to be ready in case something technologically went south fast. But there were a number of people that didn't want to do that, and so the deal was we will support this as long as you'll come over for one service and preach live. And that presented me with something of a conundrum, you know, because everybody's telling me don't accept conditions.
Right.
But I'm thinking, well, I don't want this whole thing to crash and burn for that. So I agreed to do it to keep the deal from imploding. And for 1 year, I would go over there and preach at an 8 o'clock service. So we started it with 2 services. And I would go and preach live at 8 o'clock and then come back over to the 9 Mile campus, get here about halfway through the music at the 9:30 service, and then preach at 9:30 and then preach again at the full 11 o'clock service. So I was preaching 3 times on Sunday. And I really enjoyed that, to be honest. I found that invigorating, to be honest with you, and enjoyed it. The problem was we did not need to start that campus with 2 services.
Yeah.
It was 2 very small services, and we missed the opportunity to kind of fill the room up before we then split off and did a second service, which is a natural thing to do when a church is growing. And so, but we didn't need to do it. And eventually, after that year was up, and I did say that, I'm not agreeing to do this forever. We'll do it for a year and then we'll evaluate. And they were fine with that. And we did. And as we talked about it as a team, we decided that the church right now needs the energy that can come from everybody being together.
Right, right.
And so we decided to nix that early service, go back to a 9:30 only service, have everybody together, establish some momentum, and that has indeed led to a greater period of growth.
For
and
sure.
It's not going to be long. That location is going to need to add a second service.
I agree.
If it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a synopsis of how it happened, and lots of funny stories along the way, to be sure. And the hardest part was the technology, because it failed as much as it succeeded.
Yeah.
And we tried multiple approaches. We even tried at one point pre-recording the sermon.
I remember.
And I never really felt great about that. It just felt too much of a production, too canned, if you please. And so, at any rate, they do live preaching over there now. We do the same sermon, the same text, same outline, but the preacher, whether it's Dan or Dalton, they get the freedom to kind of express themselves in the sermon using the same structure that I use here at 9 Mile.
Yeah. And again, I brought that up because to say it's been 10 years
it's hard to believe.
Wild to me. And we talk about it like it's always been a thing, but just to remember kind of what we walk through to do that. Compare and contrast that. You mentioned the 4 church plants that we have, and we've just started a new one with Cornerstone and Pace. What's the difference between doing a Hillcrest Spanish Trail location versus a church plant, Cornerstone Baptist Church, for example?
That's a great question.
Why are they different?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it is a different thing. And there may be people at Hillcrest that think that what we're doing with Cornerstone, Eric Mitchell's church now, that's now in its first month of self-sustaining operation, is a Hillcrest campus, and it's not. This is a, sure enough, independent and autonomous church plant that we are committing to support for a period of time. And it's kind of undefined at this point. I'll just say at this stage, a handful of years, and we'll evaluate that as we go along. We want them to get started well, and we want to be plugged in and involved long enough to ensure that they can establish momentum and to get to the point where they're able to take care of themselves without outside support.
Yeah.
But it's a standalone church, and we've agreed to support it. They also receive support from the North American Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, as well as from ties of those who have agreed to be a part of the core startup group over there.
Yeah.
And so it's an autonomous church plant. They don't mirror our preaching. They don't mirror our worship. They have full autonomy to structure the service as they feel led. Eric preaches whatever the Spirit leads him to preach. Unlike a church campus, a second campus or a third campus or whatever, where we're all preaching the same thing. And we might have different preachers, but we kind of review what we're doing. We're in the same series, and we structure the message the same so that there are certain things that we all say that are alike.
Right.
But the preacher is free to use his own illustration material, his own application, apply it as it needs to be applied to his particular setting. A church campus is also a part of our annual operating budget income and expense scheme every year. And so Spanish Trail is part of our budget. We budget as one church in two locations, but then we micro budget so that every campus has its own budget and can monitor income and expenses. But the bottom line is all of that money goes into the same pot.
Okay.
So it is a little bit different approach, and people need to understand the differences. Cornerstone is a church plant. Cross Community in Savannah is a church plant. Your church in Las Vegas is a church plant.
Yeah.
And then the new work that we'll be participating with in Boston is an autonomous church plant.
And there are advantages and disadvantages to both of those approaches, I would guess, as far as what you're looking at and how you're doing it. But the idea is still to replicate, to multiply.
To multiply the growth.
Encourage.
That's right.
And make disciples.
And you're able to, with a church plant, you're able to go to population centers that are under-churched. There are advantages to having a campus under a budget, but then there are challenges, and that when you have a church campus, you also have a responsibility for those facilities.
Right.
So you have to, maintain those facilities, insure those facilities, and the like. Where with a church plant, you don't have to do that. They're responsible. We just basically cut them a check on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But they're responsible for where they meet, how they meet, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And encourage with prayer and
that's right.
whatever else they need.
And other kinds of support, mission type support, community type support. We're delighted to do that.
Yeah. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to see.
Yeah, I think, at Cross Community in Savannah, I think we're looking for a way to take a group down there to do some community evangelism type work with Kevin Cannell at some point later this year.
That's excellent too.
Yep.
Good. All right, let's get into the sermon a little bit because I've used up all the time talking about that. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's our podcast. So this Sunday, last Sunday that we just finished, was the last of our 4 core values at Hillcrest. Worshiping God, connecting with others, serve the world, and invest in someone. I also want to get your take on invest, because for a long time with our mission statement, we were worship, connect, serve.
Yep.
It was those 3. And it looked nice on letterhead and it fit on t-shirts well. And then you wanted to add a 4th. But why add the 4th? Why add the invest in someone to that whole
It seemed like that there was a critical component that was missing after a number of years. And I think that's the thing, with a mission statement. You develop it, you implement it, and then you monitor and evaluate it after a period of time. And I just remembered at one of our executive level meetings, we were talking about that. Because you design a mission statement to last for a while. I don't want to have to be changing the mission statement every 5 or 6 years.
Right.
You want it to be what I call durable, biblical, memorable, durable. That's how I describe it.
Yeah.
We want it to come from the Word. We don't just make stuff up. We want it to be memorable. We don't want it to be the length of the Declaration of Independence. We want it to be short enough where it can be easily memorized. And then we want it to be durable. We want it to be something that lasts, that we can embed in the culture of our church family, where everybody can memorize it and embrace it, and then live with it and do it for a long period of time. But with just the Worship, Connect, Serve, it seemed to us that there was a critical piece missing, and the critical piece that was missing had everything to do with discipleship. That was not intentional on our part, but we emphasize the worship of God, the meaningful relationships, connecting with others, acceptable worship, teaching and training people how to worship God acceptably, corporately and privately, and then meaningful relationships, connecting with others as a means of growth, which there's a discipleship component to that without question, and then serving the world, which can be done inside the church or outside the church, but helping people understand the need to give something back and not just be a taker, not just be a consumer, but to be a contributor. And Jesus is the one who said, the one who serves me is the one who follows me.
Right.
So if you want to say I'm following Jesus, you need to be serving Jesus in some way. And so I wanted that to be a challenge. But it just seemed like deep-seated discipleship where the entire church was engaged in helping others to become like Christ was missing. And so that's where the invest piece came in. Not only for discipleship, but also for evangelism. Because if you're going to reach somebody for Jesus, and if you're going to help somebody grow in Jesus, it necessarily requires an investment. It requires an investment of your time, might require an investment of your resources, as you help people out along the way as a part of demonstrating the love and the goodness of Christ. So it requires an investment where you might have to sacrifice doing something else in order to pour the love of Jesus into another person's life. And so we began to kind of focus on that and the critical need of communicating to our church that helping others to grow biblically is everybody's responsibility. It's not just the senior pastor's responsibility, and it's not the greater staff's responsibility alone. Yes, we're to be in there doing it but with everybody else.
Right.
And so we wanted our people to be positioned to where they're encouraging others in their faith walk, growing in the grace and knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so that's why we ended up adding that. It began with defining what a disciple is. You know, a disciple is someone who has expressed faith in Christ and who follows Jesus, learns his ways, and helps others to live biblically.
Yeah.
That last part is the part that I think probably the majority of churches miss. You know, so we come to faith in Christ, we learn to follow him through a steady diet of his word, but then helping others to live biblically. How well are each of us doing with that? And if we are honest, probably not as well as we could be doing. So we wanted to put that in there so that it would remain front and center, and which is, I think, what's helpful about a mission statement, particularly a brief one, because it forces you to edit down. I remember the first time I did this in my first church. The church had never had a mission statement, and we did one. And it was terrible. I mean, it was a disaster. And the church embraced it. But I look back on it now, and it's kind of a joke. It was way too long. It was cumbersome. It was reflective of a very young greenhorn pastor who really didn't know, who had the right idea, but really kind of implemented it in the wrong way. And part of what we did was involved a number of people in the process. Which I think in one sense is a good thing, but in another sense very challenging because everybody on there has got an idea.
Too many cooks.
And the Lord help you if you say, well, we're not going to use your idea, but we will use your idea. So what ended up happening is we ended up putting this layer on, and then, okay, well, we had another layer. Okay, we'll put that phrase in here. And it was too long, impossible to memorize. I wouldn't say it was wrong, but it was just cumbersome. And we put it on a big, a big poster that we hung in the back of the church and in the foyer of the church. And, if I had stayed there longer than I have, we would have certainly completely. But I learned from that experience. And we all had a much smaller group working on the mission statement that we have used now for almost 15 years. With the exception of the invest piece, which was a little tweak. I don't see us really modifying the mission statement for at any point in time in the foreseeable future at all. I think it's a good one. It's easy to memorize. It emphasizes one phrase and 4 key values.
Yeah.
I think we're good to go. But the discipleship aspect was what we were trying to
What drove it.
emphasize
Yeah.
in terms of adding that invest component.
Yeah.
D groups came as a result of that. And we've had periods where we had a bunch of those going and smaller number of them, but that's a critical component. Great avenue to growth because it's high accountability. Doesn't last long, about a year, where you meet together once a week for hour and a half or hour to an hour and a half. Some groups might meet a couple of hours depending on the grouping, but it's 3 to 5, 6 guys, 3 to 5, 6 ladies that meet together for the purpose of holding each other accountable and really taking off. And it's designed to replicate.
Yeah.
So that when you've done it yourself, you're now in a position where you can lead your own group of 2 or 3 or 4 other individuals. So we hope to see that as an ongoing part of the life of our church, which serves as a real catalyst for growth.
Yeah, that's good. Who invested in you most in your spiritual journey?
Well, I've had a couple of people that have done that over time. Though I have to tell you, I've never been a part of what I would call a D group, super small, but throughout much of my life have been a part of what we would call connect groups that were smaller than a lot of our connect groups are, so the purpose was fundamentally the same. But in my younger days, it was a man named Cliff Ricketts who was visiting here at Hillcrest not long ago.
I remember.
He's a big, burly guy. He was professor of agriculture at Middle Tennessee State University. Taught high school ag for years, but got his PhD and was kind of an institution in Middle Tennessee in the area of agribusiness and agroeconomics, and very smart man, although I grew up baling hay on his family farm.
Yeah.
But he taught guys Sunday school in a small church that we were part of. And he was a tremendous, he taught the Bible well. He was not what I would call a Bible scholar. But boy, he knew how to apply Scripture to everyday life, which is really what he was about. And he was always doing that with his students. And he did that with us boys, particularly in the formative years of our lives. And that's where I began to take Christianity seriously. And it was because of him. And I thought, man, because we all thought Cliff was cool. He drove a Porsche. How many ag teachers drive a Porsche? And he was bigger than the car was. I mean, it was just interesting to watch him get in and out of that thing. But we just thought he was the coolest thing in the world. And he made following Jesus a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And helped us to shape our life around that. My stepfather, John Grogan, was a tremendous formative influence in my young adult life and teenage years as well. Because, man, when he sold out to Jesus, and he was raised Catholic from Ohio, it's from, the upper Midwest, kind of your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And so he was Roman Catholic for the longest time. And then he started having a relationship with that Southern mama of mine, who introduced him to evangelical ways.
Yeah.
And man, when he got right with the Lord, man, he was in all the way.
That's awesome.
And he really taught me how to be a Christian man. And he really taught me how to be a man, period. But how to be a Christian man and to walk in fidelity with the Lord. And then there have been other guys along the way, key mentors. When Judy and I started attending her church, when we got into a dating relationship, a number of those men that I could call by name, Jeff Law, Fred Corley, Louis Mays, Fred Mays, they were brothers. Louis Mays was an area manager for the Internal Revenue Service there in Nashville, and he would introduce himself, Louis Mays, I'm a publican and a sinner. But he was a deacon at our church, and he was the first guy that invited me to be his yoke fellow, which is kind of a preparatory deacon training kind of thing, and invested in me as far as leadership. These guys, you know, they dressed up to come to church, and they looked good, and they walked it. Mm-hmm. You know, they walked it.
Yeah.
And so, very thankful. And then, to kind of cap it off, during my seminary years, it was through their influence, and my pastor, Dr. Billy Friel, was a key influence as well. But then, when I surrendered to ministry in my 20s and relocated to Fort Worth to go to seminary, by the Lord's provision, and it's way too long to tell the story, maybe for another podcast, but the Lord introduced me to Dr. Gary Smith, pastor at the Fielder Road Baptist Church there in Arlington, just down from where the Cowboys play football. And he invited me to be his staff associate, just like out of the blue.
Yeah.
And said, I can't pay you a salary, but what if I pay your seminary expenses? And
wow.
Like, well, let me pray about it. Yeah. And for 3 years, I was with him in this large, 3,000 plus church setting. Had a key to the pastor's office, and he used me for everything. And what a tremendous opportunity for him to pour into me. So at every stage, at the critical points of my life, I mean, those guys in the Nashville times at Judy, what was Judy's church, that became my church, those guys taught me how to be a husband.
Yeah.
How to live as a Christian married man. And so Cliff Ricketts, a bunch of guys in Nashville, and then Dr. Gary Smith, in addition to a number of friends along the way who were consistent in their walk, just paid huge dividends in my life. And
Absolutely.
I am the person, I told the Spanish Trail campus this yesterday, it's the old Alex Haley quote, if you ever see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you know we had to have help to get there.
Yeah.
None of us, we're all the products of other people's encouragement and investment. And thank God, I think it was Dustin that posted before Sunday about the Lord's Supper, and he made the statement, we're going to talk about investing in others, but lest we ever forget the investment Jesus made in us.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we all have an obligation to pour our lives and the gospel treasure into others to help them to grow, to become stronger in their journey with the Lord.
Yeah. And that's why you invest in someone, because you have stories like this. So if you're not in a small group or in some kind of investment situation with other people, make sure you get involved and we can help you do just that. We got to wrap it up. We're way long, but Sunday morning, starting a new series called The Seven, and that's all we're going to say. We're going to, if you don't know what it is, The Seven. Come see us Sunday morning, Hillcrest.
I can't
9 Mile or Spanish Trail. You're preaching. You better know what it is. It's going to be good.
I can't wait.
I can't wait either. It's going to be real good. And we're going to talk about that next week on The Locker Room. Thanks for joining us. God bless you.